What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you after the Eagles' big win at home on Thursday Night Football to go an 8-2 after beating the Commanders. Big win to go up effectively 2.5 games in the division. They sealed it in the second half after a rocky first half. We'll get into it all and what was a great night to be an Eagles fan and to reclaim the NFC East. First and foremost, before we get into it, we're live on YouTube this way. We are live on TikTok this way. As the questions come in for both of these, we will answer them as they go. And in the meantime, we will talk about everything that transpired in that game. First and foremost, that played out like most Eagles games that we have seen this year. In the first half, you didn't think they had it. In the second half, they sealed it. Aside from that game against the Falcons with the crucial Saquon drop on that third down, man, that was exactly kind of how we expected it to go. It's frustrating at times with the Eagles. It's frustrating at times with Jalen Hurts. I want to talk about that, but in the end, they won it. We got an early comment here, and I think we got to shout this out first and foremost. From Cowboys Cave, our guy Mike Tag called this to a T. We had him on the show to preview Eagles Cowboys, and he said, looking ahead, that the Eagles would whoop the Commanders. And now we didn't get a chance to whoop the Commanders because of some of the mistakes that we make and the little details like missing extra points and missing field goals. But they still won this game, and we're up 16 with 3 minutes to go. Mike Tag, you are absolutely correct. Go over to our TikTok. There are some people waiting for you that had things to say about you, saying that the Commanders could handle the Eagles, and they could not. It is your time to shine. Let the people know it will be Jaden Daniels' time. He is a great quarterback. But right now, it looked like a team that's getting ready for the moment and a team who has been in the moment a few times over the past 3 years when you looked at these two teams tonight. And it was the first time we saw Jaden Daniels look exactly like a rookie. So we got one more from Mike here. 200-plus rushing yards on their overrated defense. See, that's the crazy thing. If we want to get into this game, the Eagles outrushed the Commanders. They had over 200 yards rushing. They outpaced them and almost doubled them up in yardage. They almost doubled them up in total plays. They almost doubled them up in time of possession. They did not turn the ball over tonight. The total yardage in this game was 434 to 264. We only had 4 total penalties. And in the end, it's 12-10 in the fourth quarter. But again, this is kind of the mantra of the Eagles in a bad way, where they leave points out on the field. They leave little details on the field. In the first half, Jalen Hurts missing some throws that were key. He missed Dallas Goedert on that throw to Devontae Smith in the end zone. He missed Devontae Smith on a crosser on a key third down that ended up being a sack. He missed A.J. Brown when the defender fell down. That would have been another third down conversion. So they just looked off. They look rigid in early situations. That is frustrating as a fan to see the gears slowly going. And then they ran a bad trick play, which admittedly, pretty frustrating if you're a fan, because you're sitting yourself thinking the beauty of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown is you don't actually have to run trick plays. You can just throw it up to these guys and they've got it. Like, you expect them to win on one-on-one matchups. Last year, A.J. Brown had over 400 yards receiving in the 2 games against the Commanders and 4 touchdowns. He was absolutely dominant. He had 17 receptions on 21 targets. Get him the ball. It doesn't need to be a trick play if you're just more supremely talented than the people on the other side of the field. Even Commanders fans going into this game without Marshawn Lattimore were really worried about Benjamin St-Juste and if he could handle the 2 amazing wide receivers for the Eagles and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. I thought going out of the draft, we loved Mike Sanders still here on this show. So it's no surprise that even as a rookie, he's good. But again, challenge these guys. We don't need trick plays. So that bad thing happens. And then Jake Elliott as well, missing the 2 field goals. We've never actually seen this from Jake Elliott. And it's a little concerning because he's been the most reliable kicker in Eagles history. And we were spoiled by David Akers, and we went kind of right into Jake Elliott soon after that. So we've just had good clutch kicking for the better half of 2 decades. So to see a performance like this where people can consider it the yips, but it's just like he's off. He's out of rhythm. He was pulling it. It kind of looks like me golfing. Everything was going one way, and it wasn't going straight. I kind of felt that from Jake Elliott's perspective, but that was concerning. But it's just another example of Eagles leaving points on the field. This time it wasn't Nick Sirianni's aggressiveness. It was more so just the Eagles, special teams. But it's always something, right? Like, as a fan, that's kind of what frustrates you. That's what keeps people in games in those situations. You're down 7-3 at halftime. You look up and you're like, Wait a second. There was one point in the second half where we were pacing. We had 300 yards to their 164, and when you look up at the scoreboard, and we're losing. So that's really, really frustrating when it comes to stuff like that. And that was exemplified in the first half, where it's these slow starts with Jalen Hurts missing receivers, missing obvious open guys, and then you thought for a second that he might be concussed. Shane Half mentioned this in his kind of recap of the game. They checked him for a concussion on the play where, again, I don't know if you can consider this a miss from Hurts because there was pressure on this one, but there were two guys wide open in zone, Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley. He kind of goes face first into the crowd or into the ground. There was a play before that on the trick play where he gets sacked that slowly developed, and you were a little bit worried there. So you're like, all right, hold on a second. What's going on? Is he concussed? Did it happen earlier in the game? But the way they came out in the second half reminds you of the way they came out in the second half against Dallas, where they just totally took over the game. They take over the game in the trenches, which you like to see. It's kind of what was missing last year, is being able to close games on the ground. And I thought what they did really well in the second half was start to find rhythm. And I want to talk about the defense for the majority of the show because they were absolutely, one, relentless, and two, totally dynamic in everything you'd want them to do against a really good offense. But I thought that they did a good job of finding rhythm in the offense where it's easy throws. I did think it was funny. They came out of the half after he got checked for a concussion, and the first play was a read option run for 7 yards to Jalen Hurts. So that was kind of funny. But it's not just necessarily like run the ball to Saquon to solve everything. It's more so exactly what they did last week, which is make easy throws so that the safeties and linebackers have to change their eyes and worry about something else other than Saquon. We're so used to run setting up the pass, and sometimes they go past setting up the run, and I think they've done it beautifully the past few weeks. And then we talked about this going into the preview show this week. It favored the Eagles in a short week situation. One, health-wise, and them getting everybody back. Two, being at home. But three, most importantly, the way they play the game really leans on teams. And you saw that in the fourth quarter. It was before even Saquon Barkley had the huge runs. When they brought in Kenny Gainwell, and it was that change of pace, and they had a 70-yard drive going, and they were getting going on those guys, and they were pulling Lane Johnson, and you could see that burst from Kenny Gainwell. It felt like the tide had turned on the Commanders in that moment. Like it was 3 straight runs, 14, 14, 7, like that in 3 plays. And all of a sudden you start to look up and you're like, man, they're getting hit like this right now, and they've been on the field this long in a short week. Again, I talked about at the top of the show, they won in time of possession, they won in plays. Like that's the Eagles football that we had come to love in 2022, where they can really start to lean on teams with that offensive line, getting Jordan Mailata back. Thankfully, Landon Dickerson was happy and healthy as well. So they had him in there, and you could just feel it. We thought that this is exactly how it would go, that if you're in the boxing ring with them long enough, the offensive line usually wins. You know, in the UFC title fights where it's 5 rounds instead of 3 rounds, and in those ones, it's more like cardio. And if you can really last the 5 rounds, and sometimes if you're like a heavyweight guy, it's kind of tougher for them. And it takes more than that. It takes getting them to the mat again and again and again, like getting punches into the ribs, getting hits, everything like that. That's what it feels like watching the Eagles offensive line, where they not only pulverize people, but it's just relentless. It's like every play they're leaning on you. And in second halves, that really backfires on teams, and it really backfires on teams when you're playing on a short week on the road. So that was beautifully executed by the Eagles offense that struggled early and then knew what their identity needed to be in the final 15 minutes of the game. So I'll stop for a few comments here. I want to talk about the defense next, and I want to talk about defense a lot because it's turning them into a real contender. They need to let Jaden rest for a few games. I'm not saying he is bad. He just needs to rest. He did mention during the game that the rib injury is still bothering him. Well, this defense certainly didn't make it easy for him to rest. So they do have a mini bye week here, so that'll help. Hurts won't last the season. Hopefully he will. I don't think anything's really changed with Hurts' style of play, but in situations like that, like don't get him killed on a on a trick play. He does use his legs quite often. I think that is a result of him not always seeing the field and not throwing with anticipation. I think in the most times he is pretty good at getting himself down. I don't think he was tonight. So I can see if you watch that game tonight, how you would think that. Let's see what else we got. Did the Birds beat the Commanders? They absolutely did. We were up 2 possessions at the end of that game, and it was great. And here's a great comment here from Tommy. D is top 3 in the league. It is starting to feel that way, and I think that's what we need to talk about next. They were phenomenal tonight. Y'all were lucky Jaden was hurt, and our starting line, I'm assuming, was also hurt. Listen, I'm going to be honest with you because I'm about to go into the Eagles defense. The Commanders are a good football team. The Eagles are a better football team. Like, it's not a diss to the Commanders. They did a great job, and they've done a good job so far. I don't think that was a necessarily like Jaden Daniels being hurt or anything like that. Terry McLaurin wasn't hurt. They couldn't get him the ball. Like, they didn't really run the ball effectively compared to how the Eagles ran the football. They turned the ball over. They couldn't get the ball to the wide receivers. I don't think that's necessarily like a Jaden Daniels is hurt thing. I think this is a byproduct of a rookie who, for the first time this year, feels like a rookie and faced a defensive like unit that was really, really good, and a defensive coordinator who is really, really good as well and very savvy, who knew how to game plan against a quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So he's going to be awesome. He is a great player. But at the same time, like, I feel like the defensive unit for the Eagles just caused so much chaos for them. They looked out of sorts for the most part. They really couldn't get anything going. And that's where it leaned on them the most. We'll get into some fantasy things either. Philly kicker killed me. Yeah, Jake Elliott. Man, this was terrible tonight from a guy that we've come to expect to be one of the most reliable kickers that we've ever seen, one of the more reliable kickers in the league, and obviously the most reliable kicker that the Eagles have ever had, dating all the way back to 2017 in the first Super Bowl run. Speaking of Super Bowl runs, how about this defense? This was insane. Jalen Carter wins every rep. And he might not always get the tackle, and he might not always get the sack, but the pressure he causes in disrupting what seemingly every play, whether it's run or pass, just creates so much pressure on offenses. He's constantly in the backfield. They tried to run the ball. He's there. They tried to pass the ball. There's a point there where he wins one-on-one, pushes the pressure into Jaden Daniels. He has to step up, and Josh Sweat is waiting there because he also won. He sets everything up in that defensive front because he just obliterates everything. There were multiple times where he's getting double teamed and still makes the tackle. And in key moments, there was a 2nd and 2. He beats the double team off the ball and makes a tackle for a loss. In the crucial 4-down stop on 3rd down and 2nd and 1, he beats his man off the line immediately and makes the tackle. And then even on 4th down, it was discombobulated from the Commanders there, but he's in the backfield again. It is every play. Like, if you just sit there and instead of focusing on the game and just watch Jalen Carter up front, he wins every single rep. And in this game, he was so dominant because sometimes it won't always show up on the box score. He had 2 tackles for loss. You could feel his presence, but when he wins every rep like that, it really sets everything else up because you can tell a quarterback is worried about where he was. He had 2 QB pressures. He had 2 tackles for loss. It felt like he had 12 just the way that he had played. He was so dominant. And this is like the 3rd or 4th time this year that I'm saying I think that was the most dominant performance of Jalen Carter's career so far and within the first 2 years. He's been that good and continues to be that good and was at his best when they needed him most against a Commanders offense that has been high-flying all year round. He's phenomenal. And all 3 Georgia guys were. We talked about this, and everyone talked about this going into the week. This was the biggest test that the linebackers had faced. They had played really, really well in the first like month and a half of the season. They were tackling well in the open field. We said on the show, it feels like Zach Bond, there's 3 of him on the field at all times. And it kind of felt that way as well tonight, where he had a bunch of different huge plays. And there were a few times where Austin Eckler got loose and they had some miscommunication there. But for the most part, they were able to shut that down. It was clear that the Commanders were going to test those linebackers, and they did it early on their first touchdown drive, test their communication, test their tackling ability, and make them cover both running backs in the flat. And they used what Kirk Herbstreit named as like the pony formation, where they had both running backs in that game and kind of test their decision making and how they feel about the like making tackles in the open field. Well, they did a great job of that. There's a play where Nakobe Dean is kind of like in a spy situation, and he makes the tackle on Jaden Daniels on a key 3rd down. They had 3 3-and-outs there in the first half. They did a great job. The linebackers also did a great job. And just to stick with the Georgia thing, because we've already touched on Jalen Carter and we've already touched on Nakobe Dean, but Nolan Smith again had a sack. That's 4 going back to the Tampa game. Since his snaps have increased, he is delivering. He has a sack in 4 of 5 games. He's been great. You can see that he's carved out his role, and you can see that he's growing in year 2 as you expected him. He's blossoming into a reliable starter, and Jalen Carter is blossoming into an absolute dominant force, heir apparent to Fletcher Cox, and even, might I say, Aaron Donald at this point, the way that he's been playing. This is incredible. Jalen, I appreciate the comment. Yes, bro, that play was clutch by Dean. He's made a few of those this year, but in that moment, it felt really big because it was still 7-0. Our offense couldn't get anything going, and we quick got them right back off the field. And you don't expect them to make conversions like that against Jaden Daniels. In the open field, you expect Jaden Daniels to win that, and he did not. So that was incredible work by him. And then lastly, when it comes to the defense, I said this on the show this week. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are 2 of the most important people in my life. They don't know that yet, but they are. And again, Quinyon Bay is back. You saw the stats. Terry McLaurin, non-existent. He had 1 catch today. And actually, the receivers in general had 2 catches from Jaden Daniels before that final drive when there was garbage time and they're in the hurry-up offense to score a touchdown. Before that, 2 receptions the whole game. Terry McLaurin had 1 and Noah Brown had 1. He gave up no receptions. 27% of the time he was targeted, nothing. Zilch. Nada from Terry McLaurin. He's another inmate in Quinyon Bay. He was awesome. He's so good. Again, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, 2 of the most important people in my life, even if they don't realize that they are. Oh, my God. And you know what? Sometimes we overhype it as Phillies fans, right? Like, we love our guys. We not overrate them, but overhype them because we love them so much. And we love the underdog kind of role and everything like that. There's nothing overhyping or underdog about these guys. Quinyon Mitchell should now be in consideration for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And sometimes that's tough for a cornerback because it's a results and product-driven rewards. So you expect somebody like the edge rusher from the Rams who can put up those sack numbers. So you expect him to win. But at this point in a primetime game like that, when you're playing a really good receiver and what's been a really good offense, and again, after another week when you just played CeeDee Lamb, when you just played Jamar Chase and all these guys, and again, he shuts somebody down, and not even shut him down. He had 1 reception going into that final drive. This is a guy who we talk about fantasy on here all the time. He is a top 10 fantasy receiver. He leads the league in air yards right now. That's how good Terry McLaurin has been now that they've put a good quarterback around him. And he was totally phased out of the game by Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay. The campaign for Defensive Rookie of the Year with Quinyon Mitchell is absolutely on right now. And I'll say Cooper DeJean also played pretty well. I thought he got kind of screwed by that pass interference. And there were 2 plays in that game. It started to feel like the 2022 Monday Night Football game against the Commanders because I don't know what the referees were doing. It was a ghost PI on Cooper DeJean there. And then in the second half, it was not a face mask, but he had Devontae Smith under the helmet. They said it was a penalty on the broadcast, and then they picked the flag up. I have no idea why. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So it was kind of a rough night for the officials there, and Cooper DeJean got screwed in that, but I still thought he played pretty well. You got to hand it to the defense stepping up while we wait for the offense to catch up and pop off. Absolutely great comment there on TikTok. That was the key to the game. Is there's been multiple times where it's been rigid for the offense to start. I don't condone it. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it can catch up to you against good teams, like if we played the Lions or somebody like that. But they shut down a really good offense tonight in the first half, and it allowed the offense to get the rhythm going, to start to run behind that line as they started to pancake guys, and you saw hands on hips for the Commanders on defense because they were out there a long time. And the reason they were out there for a long time, our defense had 3 3-and-outs in the first half, and even in the second half, like that first possession was so key. I know they put points on the board getting the field goal coming out of the half, but 20 yards of that was a ghost pass interference, and then they hold them down for the field goal. And I'm touching on the cornerbacks here, but how many times tonight did we see the Commanders, who were 1 for 9 on 3rd down before that final drive, have a play where it's like 2nd and 3 or 2nd and short and just get absolutely stonewalled to set up that 3rd down? I thought the Eagles did a great job of that, of stonewalling them in short yardage situations to set up these 3rd down opportunities, and they delivered there as well. They delivered everywhere. And a special shout out, If I'm going to mention Cooper DeJean, I got to mention Reed Blankenship as well, because we got to talk about both the exciting whites. I am absolutely buying that shirt as soon as this broadcast is done. If you didn't see it, go check it out. The two guys walking on the game tonight. But anytime it is quote unquote turnover time, and a turnover can flip this game, it feels like Reed Blankenship makes a huge play. And he did so tonight, picking off Jaden Daniels, and then it was an immediate second Saquon touchdown. So it seems like he is the turnover guy. When things get going and they need a turnover, Reed Blankenship is the guy. The key to the game was Washington going for it and not kicking the field goal. Great comment here. I wanted to bring this up. I take notes for you guys as the game goes. I don't know if you can see it here, but in all caps, I put that one. The Commanders' fourth down play where they went for it instead of kicking the field goal. We talk about this situation a lot with the Eagles and situational awareness or lack thereof. In that situation, I'd have been frustrated if the Eagles went for it. And here's why. I have no problem with aggressiveness, but look how that game was playing out. It was a grinded out game. A field goal there gives you the lead. It's only 13-12, and a field goal changes it if the Eagles can score. But look how that went. You had already just seen Jake Elliott miss 2 field goals and miss an extra point. It's no guarantee that even if the Eagles get into field goal range, that they can retake that lead. So in that situation there, take the points. Get the lead on the road in the fourth quarter to go up 13-12. I know it's still a one-possession game. I know it's only a 1-point game. But the opposing kicker in that situation had shown nothing to you that he was capable of making anything from beyond 35 yards. He missed one from 45. He missed one from 50. He missed an extra point. Take the points there. Instead, you completely flip the momentum. And how about that sequence where that was 2nd and 2, and they stonewalled them 3 straight times? It was a weird play on 4th down. But again, Zach Bond making a huge play, beating him to the sideline, and it was Blankenship, as we mentioned, making big plays. Zach Bond, open field tackling. Even Darius Slay, who we've criticized this year, getting off the block and flying to the football. He's not a guy that we expect to be a tackler, but he was in on that play. And man, that changed the course of this game. It allowed the Eagles to stay up in that situation 12-10 instead of flipping the script and taking the lead. What they did from there was go on back-to-back. We are running the ball down your throat, and you know it drives for touchdowns with Saquon Barkley, and the game was effectively over from there. The Eagles went on a run. From 12-10, they scored back-to-back touchdowns. It went the momentum just absolutely deflated this game for the Commanders with that decision. So they don't get it on 4th down. The Eagles scored touchdown on that drive. The first play out of the next drive for the Commanders is an interception. And then 2 plays into the next drive, it's a Saquon 40-yard touchdown. Good night, 26-10. That was brutal. So I saw some comments coming in here. I saw the one, Reed Blankenship does feel like the closer, especially in the secondary. He just makes key plays for us. Jake Elliott was throwing it, to be honest. I've never seen anything like that from Jake Elliott before. He's normally so clutch. And I don't know if this is something we should worry about. It was windy here in Philadelphia tonight. It was cold. I'll tell you what, we have a mini bye, and then we're playing the Rams. If he can't kick it well in SoFi Stadium, I don't know what to tell you, and I don't know what we do about Jake Elliott. I will give him every benefit of the doubt because he's earned it over the past 7 years, but man, that was rough to watch. If we lost, I would have made a big of Jake Elliott voodoo doll. I think you would have to, man, because he left 7 points on the board, and that whole time you're saying, this doesn't feel close. Like, you looked at every stat that wasn't the score, and you're saying, how are we close in this game? How are we losing this game at halftime? How is it 12-10? How is it 10-3? All of those situations, you're just saying to yourself, how did this happen? Like, how is it even that close? So I definitely get that there, where he left 7 points on the board. They were up 16 with less than 5 minutes to go, about 4 minutes left in that game before the garbage time touchdown from the Commanders. They should have been up at least 23, which is crazy to think about. Like, they felt 2 possessions better than the Commanders for the most of the night. They really should have been up by 3 possessions. It was crazy. Have a 25 parlay that wins $66K, Lamar MVP, Barkley Offensive Player of the Year, and Watt Defensive Player of the Year. $3K cash out or let it ride. Great question. I hate giving financial gambling advice because I don't want to ruin $3,000 for you. But I'll touch on this in a second, and I'll get to this comment first. I don't know what he was doing tonight, but I've never seen him do so badly. I totally agree. I don't understand what's going on with Jake Elliott. Again, we play in SoFi next game, so if he can't kick it there, we got serious problems, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Man, that was bad. Not going to lie, Eagles were lost in quarter 1 and 2. They absolutely were, and Jalen Hurts seemed really, really lost as well. Just missing easy throws. I mentioned at the beginning, like Devontae Smith on a crosser, he was there on third down. It turns into a sack. He misses Dallas Goedert. He throws it to Devontae in the end zone. It's incomplete. We miss a field goal. He missed AJ Brown when the defender fell down. On a third down, we punt the ball. So that was really, really brutal. But I'll get back to my guy here, and then I appreciate the follow there, Jordan. And I do agree. I've never seen Jake Elliott like that before. So I have a $25 parlay that wins $66K. Lamar is MVP, Barkley for Offensive Player of the Year, and Watt Defensive Player of the Year. $3K cash out or let it ride. At this point, is Saquon Barkley the Offensive Player of the Year? Like, he has now surpassed Derrick Henry, and admittedly, Henry has yet to play this week, but he's over 1,000 yards for the season. He had 100 plus again today, 2 rushing touchdowns there in the second half. He sealed it. We've talked about this, and we talked about it after the Jaguars game, and the hurdle was awesome, but he also had 199 total yards in that game and 2 touchdowns. He's even better than advertised. This is a career year for Saquon Barkley. They flashed it on the screen. It's the most yards for a guy at trading teams at this point in their career ever. He set the record. He has been even better. We thought he'd be a Pro Bowler. We thought he'd be like the second, third best running back in the league behind Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. He's now at the level of Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. He's been that good. Saquon Barkley's been amazing. So I don't want to give you the advice, but I think we actually really need to consider the opportunity that Saquon Barkley could win Offensive Player of the Year. It's probably Jamar Chase, Saquon, and Derrick Henry. And the reason I'm not listing Lamar there is because I do think he'll win a third MVP. And for the record on your parlay, TJ Watt has a good chance at Defensive Player of the Year as well. But Saquon Barkley absolutely right now is considered one of the Offensive Players of the Year. I will say this. I haven't said anything bad about the Commanders, but I'm going to say something bad about the Giants. What a piss poor run organization. Oh my God. Like the amount of comments that we get on our page and on our Twitter and on our YouTube that always say, oh, well, they made a smart move because then they can invest in, they signed Devin Singletary and we'll pay him a quarter of the amount and we'll get most of the production of Saquon. It won't be the same, but we can spend that money elsewhere on our offensive line. Hold on. Your offensive line is still bad. The quarterback is awful. It's one of the worst offenses to watch in the league. Devin Singletary already lost his spot to Tyrone Tracy. And you're telling me you didn't want to fund Saquon Barkley. And I get it because you don't want a running back on a bad team and waste that money. But the reasoning being like, oh, we'll just allocate that money elsewhere. You haven't spent it on anything good anyways, and you let your rival get a guy who's now leading the league in scrimmage yards. Like, it is insane to me that it was bad at the beginning on HBO when they let Saquon Barkley go, and it's gotten even worse. Every week it looks worse that they let Saquon Barkley go, and the decision to keep Daniel Jones instead is just blowing up in their face. It is blowing up. You saw that guy in the parking lot in the viral video this morning who had a flamethrower to light his grill. That is what the Giants are doing with money these days, just lighting it on fire instead of handing it to Saquon Barkley. So let's see. We'll take a few more comments here. Let's see. Thank you, Giants. I appreciate that. Can we beat the Lions? I genuinely believe now that we would make it a good game. I'm huge on the Lions. I think they're a great team. The Eagles definitely need to be considered there. And how about this? We're 8-2. We're effectively have a 2.5 game lead in the division, and we're tied right there with the Lions. If the Lions lose at home, I don't think they will, but we would be the 1 seed in the NFC. Crazy enough to think about, but we'd be the 1 seed in the NFC. I think that the Lions are the best team in the league, but after the past 2 or 3 weeks, this is the first time I've really believed, like, yeah, in an NFC championship and an NFC divisional round, I'll take my chances with the Eagles. I think we can contend. For the past few weeks, I'm now starting to believe that as we win these games. And it still feels like we haven't even put together the full 4 quarters yet. But I genuinely do believe, like, this point now, you can believe in the Eagles playing on the same football field as the Detroit Lions. All right. Thank you, Giants. Let's see what else we got here. Hit a defender in his face 24/7. Jalen Hurts isn't holding the team back. I don't think Jalen Hurts is holding the team back in any way, shape, or form. I think he misses throws, and sometimes he doesn't throw with anticipation. But you saw that tonight. Like, they still won the game. They were still up by double digits. I think he struggled with that for most of his career. And that's why teams have brought pressure in the past against him. But, he has been better against the blitz this year. He's been finding outlets better this year. I look at that 43-yard pass to Saquon Barkley. Like, just find the easy open guy. That's what we criticized the last guy for, Carson Wentz, for a lot, is he wouldn't take the open layups. Jalen Hurts has done a better job with that. I just think he struggles to throw with anticipation sometimes. The no calls had me screaming. Yeah, the no calls and the call, like the defensive pass interference on Cooper DeJean, and they were going to the rules analyst in the booth, and every time he was just like, yeah, I don't know what the referees were thinking there. So that was kind of funny. Anytime they go to the rules analyst and he's like, yeah, the officials just sucked on that one, it makes me livid, because I'm like, okay, so we have 82 angles of this and we still screwed it up. It's unreal. I personally think that he can't feed that talented of I missed your comment. Sorry about that. Bro has a Pickens fan page, but is an Eagles fan. That's crazy. Let's see what else we got here. We'll take a few more before we log off. Anyone else going to kicker tryouts? Yeah, we might need it. You know how College Game Day has the setup where you can kick for like $100,000 when they come to your school? We're going to do that, but we're going to do that at NovaCare Complex. So we're going to bring out Kirk Herbstreit and Pat McAfee, and everybody's welcome to kick. And instead of $100,000, you actually get $1 million, and you get to play for the Eagles. I live near San Francisco, and the amount of delusion here is crazy. I think the 49ers are putting it together, but there are certain flaws within that team. I think Ricky Pearsall will be good in substitute of Brandon Ayuk. So the offense is starting to come together as they get Christian McCaffrey back. But right now, like on the same football field, you would trust the Eagles more. I think everybody would probably agree on that one. And let's see what else we got. Nope, Lions beat y'all. We'll see. All right. So I think that kind of wraps everything that we should that we talked about tonight. This was an awesome Eagles win. It feels like the second half, at least, was some of the most fun I've had watching the Eagles this season. It's like the Brazil game last week. Beating the Cowboys was a lot of fun too, but it just felt like tonight had the juice. And in the first half, we really, really didn't have it because the offense wasn't scoring. And when you get that crowd going, there's nothing quite like it. It felt like a bit of a playoff preview, and just the atmosphere there felt great. And it felt good to seal that win, be up double digits in the fourth quarter, and execute flawlessly on both sides of the ball when it mattered most against a divisional rival with your division on the line. They were nearly flawless in that second half. I thought they were awesome. And I think there are signs to that team that you saw tonight, mainly Saquon, Jalen Carter. Those are guys, when we talk about, oh, could they beat this team and they could beat this team? Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to these teams, because of guys like that and because of X factors like that who can take over a game, I absolutely genuinely believe that they could hang on the field with anybody in this league. They improved to 8-2. They now have a mini bye week. So we'll be talking fantasy for the rest of the week. We can watch 7 hours of commercial-free football on Sunday. We don't have to worry. Game is taken care of. 8-2. We'll take our one and only West Coast trip next week when we play the Rams in SoFi Stadium. That'll be a good game. The Rams have been kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde this year, just with a few injuries on their offensive line and to the receivers. Regardless, great game. And I think this is exactly what we hope for from the Eagles going into that game. They were 2-2 going into the bye. We said, get healthy, play some bad teams, and take off. Well, since then, they're 6-0. They just beat their biggest rival. They're now 8-2, and they're leading the division by 2.5 games. It was an excellent, excellent performance, and they're back, baby. Wow, it's good to be back. All right, and we'll be back this week. I'll do some lives as well, just talking fantasy football instead of just the Eagles. But I do appreciate everybody who tuned in, everybody who commented, both on TikTok, on YouTube. We'll put out more content as the week goes and get ourselves ready to see if we can go 9-2 on the West Coast against the Los Angeles Rams. Thank you to everybody, and thank you to Quinyon Mitchell, the most important person in my life.